Now, just like the multiplication division questions, I'm going to set up an easier, simpler one first, and then we'll tackle these questions here. So let's do, I think 2 is actually easier than 1. Let's do question 2 first. And let's say I did a side example here and said 2 plus blank is equal to -3. How would you figure out what that blank is? So we're doing this without fractions first. Okay, how do you figure out 2 plus what gives you -3? Yes, Theo?
It would be -3 minus 2.
Yeah. So you want to move the 2 to the other side, and you subtract 2. Subtract 2. Yes, so these 2's cancel each other out. And you're left with a blank, and -3 minus 2. Theo is correct, which is -5. Okay? That makes sense? Then you go 2 plus -5, which is -3. Right? So we're going to do now the same thing with fractions. We want to know what the blank is. We need to move the number over to the other side. So right now we have 2/5 over here. How do you move 2/5 to the other side? You do opposite of what it currently is doing. Right now it's positive 2/5. The opposite of it is negative 2/5. So we can say our blank, so we're gonna, is equal to -3/10 minus 2/5 to get it to the other side. Now, Damien, can we just add these like this or subtract them? Or do we need to, sorry?
Add what?
Add these two fractions here. Or do we need to do a step before we do that? You remember? No? Sorry?
I'm tired again.
Okay. Theo?
You've got to find a common denominator.
Okay, you have to have a common denominator. If you look at the bottoms and they're not the same, we have to do something to make them the same. And in this case, it would be 10, right? So we multiply it by 2, this one by 2, the left one we don't have to change. This is already there. So we go -3/10 minus 4/10. And what would this equal? All right, so we got some negatives. What would it equal? Yes, Theo?
-7/10.
-7/10. Thank you. Okay. Now, the next one, question number 1, is almost identical to the question we just did. And the reason why I did it second is because the only difference is instead of a plus sign, there's a minus sign right there, which adds one extra tiny little step that we have to do at the end. Okay? So let's set up another similar example. So if I go do a side example here, I go -6 minus blank is equal to 10. What would that blank be? How would we figure it out? Anybody? How do you move the, yes?
10 plus -6.
10 plus -6. So we add 6 to both sides, right? The -6 and +6 cancel out. And this is equal to 16. So is our answer 16? Right? I see some people shaking their heads, other people, Jessica? Yeah, right? So this is where this negative out front comes into play. So our negative blank is equal to 16. Our blank is equal to -16. So you can think of this as -1 times our blank, right? So you can think of this as -1 times our blank. And to get rid of that -1, we have to divide by -1. Divide by -1. So blank is equal to -16. Or you just remember you got to flip the sign. Whatever works best for you in your mind. Okay? So I believe those are the trickiest ones there. Okay. And let's work on some word problems now. Okay? Okay. On one January day in Prince George, the temperature read negative 10.6 degrees Celsius at 9 a.m. and 2.4 degrees Celsius at 4 p.m. What is the change in temperature? So the word change has a meaning to it, and you have your English everyday meaning to it, and it has a mathematical science meaning as well. How do you calculate change? Did you guys discuss that last year? How do you calculate change? Right? You started off at Hatzick Middle School. You walked down to Subway. How far did you walk? Right? How do you calculate that out? Right? So any kind of change, whether you're talking about temperature, distance, time, any quantity, is always your final measurement minus your initial measurement. Okay? That's what change is equal to. Okay? Change is your final minus your initial. All right? So what is our final measurement here in this question? Yes?
Negative 13.
No, sorry, I'm not asking for the change, but the final. One step slower.
Positive 2.4.
Positive 2.4, and our initial was the other measurement of negative 10.6. So 2.4 minus negative 10.6, right? And two negatives make a positive. So you have 2.4 plus 10.6, which Theo said is 13. Yeah. So the change is 13 degrees Celsius. Right? That's what our units are in. Now, B brings up another term that's used in science quite a bit and in math. It says, what is the average rate of change? Okay. When you see the words rate of change, we talk about that in science a lot because that's how you measure how fast reactions go, how fast things change. Rate of change, I need to change to my pen, is always your change divided by the time it took for that change to occur. Right? How long did it take? How long was your experiment? How long did it take you to walk down to Subway? Right? Now, sometimes, I don't know, at some point next year, your teachers will start introducing symbols. There's a symbol for change. If you see a little triangle, that's shorthand for change. So they may say triangle T, that means change in time. Or triangle pH, there's change in the pH of something. Right? Okay. So our change we determined in the first step. Now, time. How long did this take? Yes?
7 hours.
7 hours. From 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Right? So you got 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, or you can do a 24-hour clock. Figure it out. So that would be 7. Then you go 13 divided by 7. Grab our calculators. Mine start up here. 13 divided by 7. Wow, 1.9. Now, that's the numerical value. Rate of change has units. What could the units for rate of change be? Yes, Thea.
Like degrees per hour?
Yeah. So what you do is you look at your units in each part of the calculation. The top was 13 degrees Celsius, and your time was in hours, right? So our rate of change is degrees Celsius per hour. The fraction line you read as per, right? So 1.9 degrees Celsius per hour. Now, if you did your time in minutes, you could have done it in minutes. You don't have to give me the question time in hours. It could be degrees Celsius per minute. All right. Is that okay? You're going to do so many rates of change calculations next year. It's all over science and it's all over math next year. All right. Last word problem for the adding and subtracting section. Okay. The Rodriguez family has a monthly income of $6,000. They budget 1/3 for food, 1/4 for rent, 1/5 for clothing, and 10% for saving. How much money is left over after all their expenses or expenditures there? So how do we calculate this out? How do we calculate how much money did they spend on each one of these? All right? Anybody have a clue? I know it's first thing in the morning here. David?
You could divide, so you took 6,000 and you divide it by each of the bottom halves of the fractions. So
Yeah.
6,000 divided by 3, but divided by 4,
Yeah, so-
divided by 5, and divided by 10.
Yeah, so they're saying food was 1/3 of your 6,000. So you have 6,000, as David said, then divide by the bottom number or just multiply by 1/3. It means the same thing, right? Yeah, so 6,000 divided by 3, 6 divided by 3 would be just 2,000. So they spent $2,000 on food, right? Then for rent, they spent 1/4. So 6,000 over 1/4. Now that one would be, yes?
150,000? No.
Oh, 1,500. 1,500. Okay. Yeah, understood. And clothing. So notice that I'm writing down some words next to each calculation. It's not just a bunch of calculations that we're putting on the page, right? So somebody reading this can make sense of each calculation I am doing. So closing was 1/5. So 6,000 divided by 5. You go 6,000 divided by 5 is 1,200. Then savings is 6,000 times 1/10, which would be 600. Right? So David, we did the calculation you asked. Does this tell us how much money is left over?
You would have to add all of the values together and then 6,000 minus that.
Yeah.
value.
So this tells us how much money we spent. So altogether, how much money did we spend? So we got to add all of these together. All right. What would that be? So we take out our calculator. We go 2,000 plus 1,500 plus 1,200 plus 600. 5,300. You guys get that number? All right. So they spent 5,300. So the amount left over would be our 6,000 minus our 5,300, which is $700.